I normally keep a diary of all of the events that I attend, and I look back and saw that I came here a number of years ago, but I hadn't got a clue how long ago it was because I didn't put the year, but it's 4 years apparently. I've been a volunteer for 12 years for the Essex and Herts Air Ambulance. Before that, 27 years in further education, with the last 12 teaching engineering at Braintree College. There are over 400 volunteers in Essex and Herts Air Ambulance. Quite a few of them are involved in the charity shops. Others at events. Some people work in the office. Some people load data into computers, and others like myself give talks. One of the main things I do now is to give talks, also guided tours of the airbase at Herts, and more recently been elected, and I was very proud of this, but quietly proud, to be picked out of the 400 volunteers, along with a colleague, to host medical induction events at Herts. We get young doctors and paramedics coming along, facing a very rigorous induction. Once they get through that, some of them spend 4 or 6 weeks on the helicopters, and it's my job and Ian's job to share the responsibility to show them around, look at the helicopter and so on and so forth. I'm going to give a talk tonight about 40 minutes, and I'm grateful for that time because, just explained to one of your colleagues, often go to parish council meetings, and one of them in particular, I get 3 minutes to talk, and another fundraising group, they said, we only want you to give a 3-minute talk, which hardly gives you time to explain what's what. So a brief bit of history first of all, an update. Since I came last time, much has happened. That's illustrated by one of the groups I went to, and they said, oh, you came here 8 years ago, and we know all what's happening. Well, it's all that week by week things happen. So it's up to me tonight. It's a pleasure to update on where we are and what we do. 1997 saw fundraising for the Essex Air Ambulance, and the money was raised. And in 1998, the first helicopter started flying from Newhall in Chelmsford. Now, I'm going to give you lots of facts and figures tonight. In particular, one is a very stark milestone, illustrates most visibly where we were and where we are now. One helicopter in those days, one pilot, 2 paramedics, 5 days a week, 9 till 5. And that was the service. Very modest, but certainly a step from virtually nothing to where they became operational. Bringing you full up to date, we've now got 2 helicopters, we've got 27 paramedics, 18 doctors, and 8 pilots, all working in shifts. After a number of years, the helicopter moved to Newhall when I joined. Not from Newhall, it moved from Newhall to Boreham Airfield and shared the airfield with the helicopter, the police one in this instance. And then in 2011, the Essex arm of the charity moved to Herts, where it's been ever since. 10 years after the Essex helicopter became airborne, the Hertfordshire branch raised money and started flying from Stevenage with, again, 1 helicopter, 1 pilot, 2 paramedics. And that continued for a number of years before it moved to where it's operating now from North Weald. North Weald and Herts, 3 things in common. Both home to the helicopters, both used during World War times. The one at Herts with the American Bombardment Group, the one at North Weald Royal Air Force. And thirdly, if you've got very, very deep pockets, you can learn to fly at both Herts and North Wales. So what are the helicopters there for? They're there to bring a free, life-saving emergency service to the people of Essex, Hertfordshire, and the surrounding counties. I emphasise that because when we moved to Earl's Cone, emblazoned on the side of the helicopter, I think it's something that was an offshoot from Tony Blair. He keeps saying people's this and people's that. It's the People's Helicopter of Essex. And quite rightly, some people saw it and thought it was just limited to Essex. But no, it's Essex, Hertfordshire, and the surrounding counties, okay? And it's there to bring a life-saving, free service to the people of Essex and Hertfordshire and the surrounding counties, those with life-threatening, life-changing injuries. Confidentiality is of the utmost importance, just the same as you go to a doctor and I might see one of you there and then ask your doctor what you're there for. He's not going to tell you it's confidential. All our operations are confidential, and quite often you'll read or hear on the media 2 people were airlifted to a certain hospital with life-threatening and life-changing injuries. That's what we do. The ethos is to bring the hospital to the patient. I'm going to concentrate on just one helicopter, and this is the helicopter that is based in this area. I haven't brought our computerized program because I'm a bit allergic to computers, and they don't always behave when I'm out and about. So we'll have a look at this helicopter. This is the one you're likely to see operating in this area. We've got 2 helicopters, as I said, one based at Liverpool, one based at Earl's Cone. And this one you're more likely to see in this area because it operates on a corridor from the coast into M11. Likewise, the one at North Wales goes from the 11 to further parts of Hertfordshire. I'm going to give you a bit more technical information. I myself with lots of information which is not necessarily needed, but the lovely WI members really don't want to know what type of engine it is and how many rivets there are and so on and so forth. This is the one we've got at the moment. Obviously, since 1997, we've had several changes of helicopter, typically 25-year life on this airframe. It's an MD 902, which stands for McDonnell Douglas 902, the result of the competition launched by the American government many years ago to a lot of the helicopter manufacturers to come up with a small compact utility helicopter that could get in small spaces. And this is absolutely right up our street because it is small, it does the job perfectly, but although you can't see it there, it's got 5 rotor blades. There's one hiding round the back. The reason for that is the disc diameter, i.e. the diameter across the rotor to tip, 33 feet. Ideal to get into small spaces where bigger helicopters require much more space. So cutting the diameter down to 33 feet impinged on the lift performance. So McDonnell Douglas put another rotor in, which 5 rotor blades. That's the first thing that's unusual. Twin gas turbine engines on the roof, developing 1,000 shaft horsepower, driving a reduction gearbox, input into the gearbox 7,000 revs, output 394. So even so, those blades are whistling round. The tips apparently are going nearly supersonic speed. About 5 litres of jet A1 per minute. Some people say, "Oh, blimey, that's it." But when you think it flies at 130 knots, 150 miles an hour, it can travel quite a distance on the fuel. Got a range of about 3 hours. If required, it can call into military bases to refuel, and drop into stands, not literally, but it can call into Stansted, it can call into Luton Airport, so on and so forth. Other interesting feature, it's got wide pads on the undercarriage. The reason being, it can land in squashy, soft conditions. Got to be careful now with the ladies. I guess in other days you wore stiletto heels. Don't know much about it. My wife tells me all about it. But all your delicate weight is concentrated on a very, very thin area, and that causes havoc in down floors with dents in the floor. So if we can spread the weight out, those same ladies, if they wore flip-flops, their delicate weight would be more evenly spread. So we've got fairly big pads on the undercarriage. The only place that won't land is in snow-covered fields. Although we've got very good maps, aviation maps, there's no indication where some of the ponds could be, and you can imagine landing on an icy pond. This weighs about 3.5 tons, so that wouldn't enjoy landing on an icy field. Twin sliding doors, where it says that's Herts Air Ambulance. Originally, the American military adopted this helicopter in area theatres of warfare, what they rather politely describe theatres of warfare, where they could drop into a narrow gap, evacuate troops and get them away to a field hospital. So twin sliding doors. In this instance, it carries one patient, and from earlier details I gave you who was on the helicopter, we got 2 pilots, one flying the aircraft and one in charge of navigation, and another pair of eyes. Interestingly, I haven't brought the map with me, but one of the maps, it shows Wilmington Airfield on their area of high glider activity. So these are all the things that pilots have to be wary of. Looking at East Anglia in general, starting at the top, got Norwich Airport, then we come down to Mildenhall and Lakenheath, then to Southend Airport, then to City Airport, Heathrow, and then Stansted, and then we got lots of little airfields where aircraft fly from. So at one time, the paramedic used to sit in the front with the pilot. And I think they never said, but I'm sure they went, pleased about that. They didn't have to undergo a 6-week training course to read the maps. The best place, obviously, for the paramedic is in the back to assist with the medical care of the patient. And so now we've got 2 pilots, the captain and the navigator. And in the back, we've got a paramedic who's trained in pre-hospital care. And we've got a doctor who's trained in pre-hospital critical care. The selection procedures for the paramedics are horrendous. Luckily, I've been excused those. And just after they sat down and got the breath back, I'm invited to show them around the helicopters and the airbase and all the facilities. 300 people applied, suitably qualified people, and 3 were selected. That's not to say the other 297 weren't that good enough, but what the examiners were looking for was the very best. How do you get on with each other? Why do you want to do this? Their medical skills and their ability to perform under the most horrendous conditions, not only weather, but perhaps stress conditions. And there's a snap, 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 what we can do next, what we can do this, they're there to assist the doctor and so on and so forth. Interesting thing at the back, being American, it's got a facility on there. They like to use short acronyms, and it's NOTAR, NOTAR, which you think, what's that stand for, please? No tail rotor. No tail rotor. Apart from the cyclic and other controls that the pilot has to contend with, he also has to contend with a multi-bladed fan which nestles between the two engines. He can alter the pitch and the revs of that if he hasn't got enough to do already. It blows air down that hollow tube down the back at about 300 miles an hour velocity, and along the other side of that tube, what appears to be bad workmanship, are two gaps. You think, oh, they didn't get their metal work right when they rolled that tube up. Two gaps, one at the top, one at the bottom. What happens? Some of that air escapes and attaches itself, called a coanda principle, to the surface of that boom. It sticks even further by the downwash from the blades. Consequently, you've got low pressure on the other side of that tube, and when it exhausts this side, you've got high pressure. So aircraft, it works like an aircraft wing. Low pressure on the other side, providing lift. This side, we've got thrust. Advantage of that is it's safer. You haven't got a lot of mechanical parts that can fail, and it's more fuel efficient. The residue escapes. There's a cone at the back, which the rudder pedals, the pilot steers obviously, and at low speeds, that cone can rotate and direct the air either to the left or the right, the fuselage, sorry, port or starboard. Above 70 knots, apparently, the vertical fins take over. So you've got the collective controls and so forth, collective control and the pitch of the blades and the rate of flying. At one time on the early helicopters, on the end of the collective lever, you had to adjust the RPM of the engine. The more pitch you've got, the more power required for lift, but that's now done automatically according to one of the pilots. Pitot tubes in the front, which, as you know, can measure airspeed. On the front there, it says hot, do not touch. Now, I'm all for having youngsters coming along and being involved with the air ambulance and doing projects and learning all about it. They are our future. But one of our little visitors annoyed one of our pilots because he would keep touching those pitot tubes and hanging on them. He said, don't keep doing that. I said, don't touch. He said, what are they there for anyway? And our chief pilot said, well, actually, they're machine guns. And if you misbehave, I'll let several bullets fire, which I don't think he appreciated. No? At the back, what's called the hockey stick, that's there as a third line of defence. When the helicopter comes in, high angle of attack to kill the speed, that's just there to cushion the landing and prevent any damage. When I joined, the Earl's-Cowan helicopter was yellow, and the North Weald helicopter was red. And then in 2017, the PR department ground into action, and they said, we're not going to tell you at all what the new colour scheme is going to be, but in 2017 it's going to be launched with great fanfare of trumpets and lots of dignitaries invited. And lo and behold, the yellow and red livery was combined to what we see today. This helicopter, if you wanted to buy it, at £6.5 million. When it came on stream, the charity found that it would exhaust all our reserves. And so for a princely sum of money per month, big chunk of money, specialist aviation services over in Gloucestershire provide the helicopter, they provide the maintenance, and they provide the crews. and they obviously get the crews from all over the country. One of our pilots, ex-military, in fact, our new director of operations flew in wartime or hostile situations in the army, then transferred to the quieter pastures of flying Boeing 737s, that seems to have come back on board to look after all the operations. It flies at 130 knots, which means it can get anywhere from Earl's Cone to the furthest part of Essex in about 15 minutes. Then, has anybody got any questions so far?
Have you been allowed in one yourself then, Roger?
Sorry?
Have you been allowed in to fly in one yourself here?
To answer that question, when the AW169 was launched, a great fanfare of trumpets over in Hertfordshire to the same colour scheme, one of our directors of fundraising said, well, I know you like helicopters, Roger, and Ian and Pete, would you like to go over to Hertfordshire and assist with the preparations? Oh yeah, we get over there. It's a windy day, and the gist was to gift wrap this helicopter with a big bow around it. I'll answer your question in a minute. In the end, Jim, our chief pilot, said, I'm going to give up, because as fast as he got the wrapping on one side, it came off the other side. He said, I'm going to take it home, land it in the field next to my house, and come in over the stately home tomorrow. On the day, the general public were invited to put in bids for 2 people to fly in it for 2 hours. And I hadn't got a clue what the bid was, the winning bid, until it was unveiled. And I was 50 quid short. Then my wife, being very, very knowledgeable, she actually said when I got early retirement, you want to get away from the stress of education, you want to drive a white van and deliver leaflets. And that was the first job I had when I went to the air ambulance, in a little white van going around Essex delivering leaflets on behalf of the air ambulance. So what happened then, Jenny, my wife, said, if you want to go in that helicopter, why don't you offer to match fund it? Because they were a little bit disappointed with the figure that was given. So the gist of it is I went in the office, match funded it, and Ian, my colleague, said, well, Jenny won't fly in, and so we'll split the difference. So for 400 quid each, we went all round Essex and Hertfordshire on a public relations exercise. It gave money to the air ambulance. It wasn't for the faint-hearted, but I enjoyed every second of every minute of every hour. So yes, had flown in one of the helicopters. Nowadays, with COVID still lurking, Ian, my colleague I mentioned earlier, came round and saw me on a Monday evening, helped with a guttering repair, phoned up on the Tuesday, said, I'm awfully sorry, I've contacted COVID. You think, where the heck did he get that from? So it's still lurking. So the general public, unfortunately, are not allowed to get near the helicopter now and touch it and so forth. And so that's a barrier to protect the crews. Next question is, how many times does it go out in a day? Up to 6 times a day. This is in this area, Hertfordshire or Essex. One of our paramedics will go on a 4-day shift, and then they might be chartered to go over to Broomfield Hospital, where visitors there will recognise the low, squat, buff-coloured building with smoked glass. This is where all the calls for the Essex ambulances and the Essex Air Ambulance come in. And it's up to that paramedic to listen to everyone, up to 3,000 a day over a 24-hour period. A lot of them are nuisance calls, of course. The paramedic will listen to the call, and it's the paramedic alone, no one else, not Dave Mancock, BBC Essex, not King Charles, but I think not the Prime Minister. It is the paramedic who decides whether to call a helicopter or not. And the call will either come into Earl's Cone or to North Weald. Obviously, if it's in Colchester or Clacton, when there's that sad occurrence when the tragedy occurred, when someone got swept under Clacton Pier and drowned, a helicopter was dispatched to the beach to assist where they could. It's quicker to get the Essex helicopter to Clacton than it is the Hertfordshire one. Similarly, if there's an accident in Welwyn Garden City, they'll use the other ones. So all the information is given to the crew, the pilot and the co-pilot will go get the helicopter warmed up. And then when it's all ready to go, the doctor and the paramedic will join them. They've briefed the system on where they're going and what they're going to do. Not all calls are required. They could get 3/4 of the way to an incident, then turn back, but majority are dispatched and land at the required place. When they arrive, they circle round. Now it's my job to comfort people, that's the right word, with all their queries, what they have. And when it flew over my house and was circling round and getting lower and lower, my neighbour said, your mates don't know what they're doing, do they? They don't know where they are. I said they do. The pilot said the most difficult thing is a safe place to land. And a good example is that when it lands on the M25 or roadways, and last year on Big Naked Common, it was circling round and every dog owner in the area appeared and prevented it landing until the police cleared the area. But they're looking for a safe place to land, an economical place to land. Good place to land is a school playground, but no good at the weekend because the gates are locked and they can't get out. So once landed, the doctor, along with the paramedic, will ascertain what's gone wrong, and not always do we dispatch the patient to a hospital. They might be still unwell, but that doctor's experience, these are consultants from the Royal London or Cambridge, Edinburgh, very senior doctors, they will ascertain what's gone wrong. Are they robust enough to go by a land ambulance to the nearest hospital? The answer is yes, they'll be dispatched along with the doctor. If not, they will be airlifted to the most appropriate treatment centre that will give that patient the very best attention. Someone with severe upper injuries and life-threatening, life-changing injuries, depending on the nature of it, they'll be airlifted to the Royal London in Whitechapel or to Addenbrooke's. I live in Halstead. Sadly, one of my wife's friends was involved in a very, very serious road accident a few years ago. She was airlifted to Addenbrooke's, but despite the very best efforts, she didn't survive. Burns, now the leading centre is Broomfield. Cardiac arrest, which is sadly on the increase, to Basildon or to Papworth, and so on and so forth. Now, brain injuries are very, very serious, very strong box. Mine's very thick, very thick skull. In there, there's the brain, cushioned by a sticky yellow fluid, cerebral fluid. If you do that, I haven't done that. That cushions the brain. But if you fall off a building and bang your head directly, or you're involved in a car accident, frontal impact doesn't do any good at all. And wherever it is will affect certain areas. On the front here, unfortunately, the higher senses deteriorate first. Taste, smell, thinking skills. People can't recognise their children, so on and so forth. They're unable to walk or talk. So the quicker we can give the appropriate medicine to that patient, which the doctor can do, paramedics are not allowed to do, although they're highly qualified, they're not medically qualified to administer high performance drugs. This is where the doctors come in, both male and female. Quicker we can get treatment to the brain, the better the outcome. We can't guarantee the outcome, but the better the outcome could be. The difference between someone walking with a stick and someone in a wheelchair. And so Queens in Romford is the place we go there. Off the top of my head, road traffic accident, typically 60 a month. Not surprised, that's my opinion, not the air ambulance, that the rushing about and hostility on the roads is a bit frightening these days. Accidental injuries, industrial injuries can be 40. Domestic incidents can be up to 20, and burns and so forth. What is particularly frightening, I find it frightening now. Last year, well, no, it's the year before, when Sir David Amos was stabbed, there were 89 other stabbings that this helicopter attended to in Essex alone. These are not where someone's preparing a salad at home with a knife and falling over the cat and stabbing. These are people who deliberately go out with a blade to harm. And so, leading onto that part, further improvement of the service, not only putting the doctors on board, but further improvement was to carry blood on board. This is applied free of charge every day from Alexandra Hospital, kept in a temperature-controlled environment at the bases. When required, it's carried out in an insulated bag to the helicopter and can be administered on site to the patient. About 80 to 100 patients have benefited from blood, very precious. It carries oxygen, it carries its own self-repair kit. If you cut your finger, not too badly, direct pressure, hold it there for 10 minutes. Inside the blood, there's little yellow, sticky, what we call platelets that are floating around. They're like little bricks, and they stick over the wound, and gradually, give it time, they build up a sufficient cover over the wound, and hey presto, they stop bleeding. More severe blood loss is terrible. They only got about 5 pints. And so if we can get blood into a person and get them to hospital, radio through and tell them what's wrong at the hospital, the better the chances. And blood also carries oxygen and other goodies. Saline's all right, but it hasn't got those same qualities. You often see someone being plugged into a bag of saline, but then people who are always curious to know what things cost about £600 a patient. And people go, God, blimey, Roger, 600 quid? Well, you go and talk to that person who was saved because they had a blood transfusion. They won't mind it's hitting £600. And every time we have a challenge, that challenge is met by the kindness of the people of Hertfordshire and Essex. The other example is when COVID struck and we virtually shut down, but the crews continued flying with all enveloping plastic suits. And every time they came back to the air bases, they went through a decontamination system. All the equipment was sterilised. All the equipment needed to provide COVID protection was required, and £60,000 the appeal went out. Within 2 weeks, that appeal was met very kindly by the people of Essex and Hertfordshire. because some of the more severe cases were airlifted to the Nightingale Hospital in East London, which brings me on to a further improvement we've had. Once a person has recovered and sent home, they still require backup. So we've got patient liaison people who specialise, for example, if someone's lost an arm or sort of semi-paralysed through a brain injury, they specialise in finding the best recovery areas for them to attend to improve the chances of not necessarily returning to a full and active life, but certainly make an improvement. What was on board then, I mentioned we've got a pilot, paramedic and 2 doctors. We've also got state-of-the-art equipment which can be found in most A&E departments. I'm sure your training programs are gliding. If there's an accident, are you trained to do CPR? Yeah, anybody do? Has anybody done CPR?
Yeah. We have several doctors as pilots here as well. So.
I can assure you it's jolly hard work. Jolly hard work. In fact, at the college, every member of staff had to be within touching distance, although we're not saying, can't say that now, touching distance of a student, to be able to do CPR. We all practiced that, but the doctor at the time said, "Oi, Rod, come here, Roger, come here, don't be so keen. The rate you're going, you'll end up as a patient yourself. Because once you start, you've got to continue." If you watch too many programs on television, I've never forgot Ken Barlow when one of the characters died in the street and he felt the carotid artery and said, "Oh, well, they've died, don't bother." None of us, unless we're medically qualified, are in that position. Once we start, we've got to keep going until a medically qualified person comes along and says, "Right, thank you very much, I'll take over." Or, okay. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. And it's hard work. Imagine being out there tonight in the cold. You've got to, oh, I'm getting cold, my back hurts me, and seeing stars. Part of the training that I enjoyed was going to Chelmer High Street outlet, where members of the public were invited to do CPR on one of our mannequins. And our mannequins are 8,000 quid each. So they're no ordinary mannequins. They're almost lifelike. They've got a heartbeat, the eyes flutter, you name it, they do it. And they were invited to do CPR on the mannequin. How you getting on? Yeah, my arm's ache. What's the time, Roger? 4:15. Oh, I've got to go now to pick the kids up. You can't do that. Once you start, you've got to take on that responsibility to continue. We've got compression machines on each of the helicopters, and to assist with nighttime flying now, we've got rapid response vehicles. So we've got 4 of those, 2 at North Wheel, 2 at Elstown. So we've got 2 helicopters, rapid response vehicles. That's 6. Each one of those has got one of these compression machines on it, which does it automatically. And that will go for a couple of hours. The skill comes with the doctor, who looks at the physique of the person and decides the strength of those thrusts. And they're quite vicious, I can assure you. The patients or the mannequins almost jumping off the floor. We've also got patient monitors on each aircraft, which, as the name suggests, gives the doctors and paramedics all the information they need to know the condition of the patient. Probes on the fingers, on the head, on the chest, blood pressure, blood temperature, blood volume, amount of oxygen in the blood, sugar levels, and so on and so forth. And again, a lot of heart attacks, I don't know if any of you play golf, a lot of heart attacks take place on golf courses. And quite rightly, someone collapses, doctor comes along. What's his name? Asked Peter. Is he diabetic or, I don't know, drinks a lot in the clubhouse? Yeah, we didn't ask that. Is he diabetic, do you know? And we can take a pinprick of blood with an instrument, and that will tell the doctor if they are diabetic. And the doctor can then, if necessary, administer warfarin to cut down the amount of sugar floating around. And all of that combined, we've also got instruments on board which can reverse if someone's accidentally taken an overdose of insulin. They've got machines on board with handheld which can produce the results the doctors are looking for. In total, that's 60,000 quid's worth of equipment on each helicopter and each rapid response vehicle. I mentioned earlier flying at night. The helicopters, this one doesn't fly at night. I'll tell you why in a minute. Typical shift would be today from 6 in the morning till up to 4, obviously longer in the evenings. In times of bad weather, low visibility, low flow, this one didn't fly, and their job was taken over by rapid response vehicles. These are Volvo estate cars in the same livery, carrying the same equipment, the doctor and the paramedic. So they operate at night time, but just recently, in the last couple of weeks, the helicopter at North Weald has begun flying night times with night vision goggles and all the measuring equipment on the helicopter. The reason this one can't do that, there's a 10 till 6 curfew on the airfield, which the residents, was kind apparently, when a hard runway was put in for the light aircraft, they complained about the noise, and similarly with the noise from the helicopters. So we've now got nighttime cover at North Weald. We haven't got it here yet, so in the event of an accident tonight, we've got rapid response vehicle. Also, we've got the helmets to consider. They're £2,500 each. Nothing more than a fancy crash helmet with earphones and a microphone. Flying suits, which I checked up the other day, nothing more than fancy red boilers with their names across here. Does anybody remember Jack's at Colchester, government surplus? I remember getting a boiler suit there, red, for 30 quid. Not so with this lot. They were 600 because they are fire retardant, apparently. I got a verbal reminder from Helston Fire Brigade when they came up and did a mock rescue from with a dummy under a car. And I said they were fireproof, and the sub-officer said, no, they're not, they're fire retardant. They have to be sprayed with a special chemical, and after 6 launders, they have to be resprayed because that loses its quality to resist flames. They're now £1,400. So you think of all the crews we've got, the doctors, paramedics, and the pilots. And then finally to consider, we've got all the drugs on board. I've just been issued with with a very, very high security pass to get anywhere on the airbase, with the exception of the drugstore. I'm not particularly bothered about not getting in the drugstore because there's some very, very, very sensitive stuff there, which apparently is issued by the Home Office. And if the air ambulance is issued with 10 units, they have to account where each unit goes. So, for example, when they come back from a job and they've used one of those units, it all has to be recorded, where it was, why it was used, and so on and so forth. But those drugs are expensive, much beyond the average paracetamol. one of the drugs they can give, which is only when the patient is reasonably with it. Imagine someone fallen off a ladder and broken the back. Well, that's pretty dodgy, because any movement, that spinal column is only the thickness of a pencil lead. You snap that or bruise it, all feeling is lost. So someone laying on the floor has to be reasonably with it, and the doctor will say, I'm now giving you a special drug to immobilize you temporarily. So they can literally paralyze a patient temporarily for a couple of hours before they can go to the hospital. You can imagine a person losing their feeling and not being realising what it was. That's one of the drugs they use. Another one, I can't say it properly, but what I can tell you is it's a clot buster. Another bit of kit they've got on board, they can put it on a person's chest, and it's rather like a mini X-ray machine. It can see where there are clots, and they can disperse those quickly with a clot buster. Each injection is £600, and a patient can have 3 of those. Put that into perspective, my wife depends on tablets that she depends on, and over the years, bless her, the quantities have declined. And when talking to her doctor, I said, why is the amount of tablets declined, Dr. Spencer? He said, well, they're very expensive. I said, well, Jenny went out to work for a number of years. She earned that, to have these medicines. She said, we can't afford it in the surgery. No problems on here. If we want a new drug and it's expensive, the doctors will put forward a case and inevitably they'll get it. So combined with pilot salary, this is leased monthly, the fuel, the running costs, and all the drugs and consumables on board. How much do you think it costs to run the Essex and Hertfordshire air ambulance for 1 year? For 1 year.
1.5 million.
Thank you for that. I'm pleased we got, thank you for your response. That gives a start at 1.5 million. Have we got any more bits on there?
6 million.
6. We're going towards a better figure. Little bit more, say a little bit more, quite a bit more. 9 million pounds a year. 9 million pounds a year. We're not government funded, i.e. we don't get direct funding from the government. A lot of people admonish me and say, oh, when Boris was in town, what do you want to do, Roger? Go down the street and get on to Boris and get some money out of him. Well, we did get some money out of Boris and his government. We got £1 million. And that was towards a capital building project. And several years before that, I can't remember, Chancellor Osborne, however many years ago was that, when the LIBOR scandal was going on and the banks were creaming off money and not using it properly, the Chancellor came down heavily on the banks, fined them all £1.5 million. Incidentally, there's 32 air ambulances in the country. And we received £1.5 million, which we very gratefully received. But largely, we don't receive direct government funding. And a lot of people say we should do. A lot of people say, oh, blimey, keep them in the way. Because you can imagine when the COVID struck, the doctor said we need this equipment, 60,000 quid's worth. There was no hesitation. When the doctors had looked at various new drugs, the clot buster, they're X number of pounds per injection. All right, we'll have some of those. And I would imagine now with no time flying, the costs will increase even more from 9 million. So how do we raise the money? It's raised in-house. We've got 2 lotteries. Is there anyone here who plays the, have you won anything?
No.
I knew that before. I can assure you, people do win. There's a chance to win with the rollover, and if you're paying the higher rate of £2 a month or £2 a week rather, there's the opportunity to win up to £24,000. But we've got a lot of people playing the first lottery, and then the government put a ceiling on that. So the financial with kids decided we'd run a second lottery. So that generates about 60% of the money we require every month. Lots of people playing that. We've now got regular giving, where people, if they decide from their bank account standing order, £5, £10, £20, £25 a month, they will do that. We've got 2 or 3 major events coming up. One at Colchester on March the 25th. Strictly air ambulance. We're not allowed to call it Strictly Come Dancing because the BBC got very, very cross indeed and said if you use that, it's a registered thing, trademark, legal action will be taken. Same up at Newport Pagnell, where my late friend was going to raise money for a hospice. He said, that's a good idea, Rog. We'll do a Strictly Come Dancing. No, he couldn't do that. So we got Strictly Air Ambulance. Can't remember some of the dancers' names, but a lot of the dancers off the television program are coming down. Basha, does that make sense? And they're going to give their dancing free of charge. I'm not in the front of the queue when fitness is concerned, so I find watching it very exhausting. Those people must be in the gymnasium every day because they're thinking about not the perspiration and virus. And 900 people are paying to come and watch that. And we've got David Whiteley this year from Anglia Television chairing. And we've got major sponsors in Colchester, Lancaster, garages and so forth, and Kawasaki Motorcycle, they will sponsor us. That's one fundraiser. Moving on, we've got the Jaguar Drivers Owners Club rally at Chelmsford in the summer, and then in the autumn it's just been announced that we've got the motorcycle run. A lot of our patients are former motorcyclists, of course, and they like to, whether they're relying on us or not, they like to support us. £15 to enter to ride a motorcyclist and then another £10 for the pillion passenger. Up to 5,000 motorcyclists a year ride from Dunton Sport Research Centre down the A12 to Harwich, spend a day, listen to jazz bands. They can buy motorcycle gear at reduced prices, get a chance to look in the helicopter and chat to the crews, and that normally raises a lot of money. I think that's about it. Has anybody got any better questions?
Yeah, how much time does it take when you start the engine till you can actually lift off and fly towards the patient?
From the moment we get the call to when they're out, about 8 minutes.
Okay.
8 minutes.
If you, when you arrive at a hospital, presumably you see all these ambulance queues, but everybody doctor attendants, do they go straight through into accident and emergency?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, if you've got a patient on board, it's in charge of a doctor, so in theory, does he jump the ambulance queues that might be at the hospital?
Well, there's pads at Broomfield on the roof, one at Addenbrooks now, although there's not a pad in the cruise sense, it's a landing area on the golf course, and there's helicopter pads at other places as well.
Now,
But inevitably they will have radioed through to the emergency department. They come out with all this wonderful medical jargon. Look at this patient, 50-year-old with such and such a burns, respiration, blah blah blah, and they'll get priority to go in and land. Yeah.
I mean, like not priority to land, but priority to get into A&E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a remarkable air of calm. Seeing one of our patients, a tree surgeon, up a tree, sitting on a bough, and he sawed off the bough that he was sitting on. So he came down, hit his head, and the doctor arrived, and quite calmly he radioed through and he said he's got a compression in the upper cranial sphere or something. That doesn't know about the condition. Patient is fairly lucid at the moment. Temperature's this, you know, reactions this and that. I think what's happened, the skull went in, then it's bounced out again. And he calmly described this to the neurosurgeon at Queen's when they got there, and all the students were around. And then the doctor said, oh, well, I think we'll get him into the scanner and see what's gone wrong. None of this Corporal Jones, don't panic much about. I know that's an elongated answer to your question, but normally they'll get in before. Perhaps that sounds a bit unkind, but if they're landing on the helipad, that's the priority landing, and then they'll deal with the patient. I think I've covered everything. I hope I've covered everything.
Obviously, working for the medics working on the aircraft is quite a stressful environment. How long would a tour be? Typically, would they stay with the air ambulance before they move on to another job?
Question there. They're there for 3 years, and there's not much respite from. The other day I was in the air base, and I've gone out. I'll be back in a couple of hours, and they landed and just had time for a cup and fill in the paperwork. Then they got another shout, and then they went again. So there's not much of a gap between what we call shouts. Okay, is that all right?
That's great, thanks. And
I don't think, has anybody got any more questions?
I don't think there are any more questions online. But Steve, did you want to say anything?
Just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah, I did just put a note online, which you probably missed. But Roger asked if anybody does the lottery. Well, I do the lottery, and it's a bit of fun. It raises quite a bit of money for the air ambulance, but a bit of a complaint there that I've never won anything at all. But Roger, Adrian, you can sum up, but I'd like to just thank Roger for putting in so much time to giving us what an excellent talk. I'm sorry I missed the middle bit of it because they were moving me into a ward, but I managed to get in back in towards the end. The air ambulance is very close to my heart, and yeah, I'd just like to thank Roger for putting the time in and coming giving us a really excellent talk.
It's a pleasure to come again, and thank you for the what I call continuity. I mentioned Jacob at Drivers. This will be my third visit to them. I go and see them in the autumn and in the summer. And on behalf of the Essex and Herts Air Ambulance, I'm sure you'll join me in wishing Steve a full and swift recovery.
Yeah. Right, and I think Steve put a WhatsApp out earlier. For those that missed it, I think the club has raised over £1,000 in donations for the air ambulance. So well done, everyone.
Thank you very much. Just one final bit. People ask about cultures in general. Yes, it goes into culture general. It's a general hospital. It's not a criticism. And it's beginning to do a lot more road traffic accidents now. Obviously, if someone's got a brain injury or a heart scare or something else, not a criticism of Colchester or the staff. They haven't got the staff, they haven't got the equipment, whereas Basildon or Royal London, they've got the equipment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
If you like this video, then please click the like button below. Why not subscribe to the Essex and Suffolk Gliding Club channel by clicking the subscribe button and then click on the bell so you get notified when new videos come out. For more details, find us on Facebook or visit our website at esgc.co.uk, where you'll find information on flights, lessons, and club membership.